And welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment of our program brought to you by Calhoun's. Folks, Memorial Day weekend is upon us, and for a lot of you that means picnics, family reunions, church outings. Save yourself time and hassle and let Calhoun's do the work this year with their Feed 5 or Feed 10 family pack. Look at this. It even comes in its own little picnic basket. They pack in there barbecue, buns, slaw, beans, the sauce, utensils, plates, you name it. They do it. They take care of you. Let them do the work. Next week when you're out there with family or friends and you're out wanting to do the picnic thing, the group to call, Calhoun's. Ask them about their Feed 5 and Feed 10 family packs this week. All right. Aaron Torres, a guy I'd never heard of Fox Sports, put Butch Jones on his list of 5 hot seat football coaches whose schedules could doom them. Let's go ahead and put up the list and let people see this. There you go. There's the headline from his story. And there are the 5 coaches. Kevin Sumlin, number 5. Brian Kelly, number 4. Jim Mora. Butch Jones, number 2. Gus Malzahn, number 1. 3 of the top 5 who could be doomed are from the SEC.
3 of the top 5 play Alabama.
And 3 of the, there you go. There you go. So that was interesting, but we've talked about expectations for this season already. A few weeks ago, we actually broke down scenarios of what it would take to keep Butch Jones or what might get him fired, that kind of stuff. But I want to look big picture. What should Vol fans expect over a 10-year span? I'm going to ask you that, but I'm going to show you these numbers first, all right? Now, all time, Tennessee is the 11th best football program in the country in terms of winning percentage. Sounds great, you know, you're 11th best. But if you take that percentage and multiply it by over a 12-game season, which is exactly what you do. I'm going to get an email or two that says, well, you're not taking into account they played fewer games. Yes, I am taking it into account. That's why we're multiplying it by a 12-game schedule. That is the win percentage all time. Multiplied against a 12-game schedule, you're looking at 8 wins a year. Out of it, you'd be 8-4. The best in the country, Michigan, would be about 9-4. So anyway, let's go ahead and look at the next graphic here. If you look at Tennessee in SEC terms, they are second only to Alabama in terms of championships. 26 for Bama, 13 for Tennessee, 12 for Georgia. But if you look closely, look at the hills and valleys. SEC was founded in 1933. You went, no titles those first 5 years. Then under Neyland and Wyatt, you won 6 in the next 19 years. Then you had a 10-season drought. Dickey wins 2 out of 3. Then you have a 15-season drought. From 85 to 98, Majors wins 3, Fulmer wins 2. You get 5 in 14 seasons. Since 99, you've got an 18-season drought. Unfortunately, if you're doing the math problem there, those intervals between championships keep getting longer and longer. The droughts are getting deeper, from 10 to 15 to 18. Let's come back to the guys here on the desk. When you look at that, I think a lot of times we talk about what's your expectation, realistic expectation in a 10-year period, win the SEC twice. History says they win it every 6.3 years, so that'd be once. It'd be 3 times over 20 years, 1.5 in a 10-year span. What's a realistic expectation over a 10-year period? What do you expect from Tennessee? Because that would say 80 wins, 1 SEC title. And we're not talking goals, by the way. Goals, that's 10 SEC titles is the goal. Realistic expectations.
I think realistic expectations are that you're in the mix for the SEC East title 50% of the time. Okay, how does that translate into record? I mean, okay, you're going to be right around 8-9 wins to be in that mix. So just half the time be in the mix for the East Division title. Out of 10 years, that's 5 years, and the other ones you're rebuilding, which people don't accept anymore.
Based on that graphic, I would say 5 titles in the next 15 years, right? So they're due for an upswing.
That's right.
But seriously, if I had to pick, I would set it probably at 1.5 in 10 years. One decade to the next.
Right.
That's
so 3 over 20.
Yeah. So I'd say 3 over 20. That's what I would think the realistic expectation. And to Bob's point, with SEC championships, of course, Alabama with Saban kind of throws a monkey wrench in all that.
Yeah.
But I would say you need to be in the SEC East Division hunt at least 7 of those 10 years and win it 3 or 4 times.
One of the things that stands out before I get to you, one of the things that stands out when you look at those overall winning percentages for those schools, well, how can you be the best in the country if all you're doing is winning 8 games a year? Well, the trick is you're not those schools that win 3 games a year. Yeah. You limit those. Your worst is like Tennessee had a 5-win season. I think the worst they ever did was a 4-win season in '77 in Major's first year. but they've never had an 8-loss season. So when you then move up to a 12-win season that you had under Philip Fulmer, okay, that cancels out the 4. But you're really just not dropping. Whereas most programs in the country do have those horrible seasons. Tennessee and those teams at the top of that list usually don't have the horrible seasons, even though fans would consider a 5-win season awful.
And when they do, they limit those. They don't
Right.
go on a decade run of 5.
Although they had about 3 straight here. But even then, as disappointing and ugly as that is, that's not as bad as some schools get. Thoughts on realistic expectations?
Well, for me, I don't put it in terms of SEC championships right now because you got Alabama just skewing the numbers. I would go back to that era where they were in the SEC championship game as East champions like every 3 years, 98, 01, 04, 07. I think that's realistic because, I mean, let's face it, Florida and Georgia have every advantage Tennessee has and more, so you're competing against 2 really good teams. So that's what I would put it. Win the East about every 3 years.
Okay, I think that's fair. What do you got,
That's
Chuck?
about what I was going to say too. And sometimes it's got to win a tiebreaker, you know, to win the East too. But you got to get back to where you're getting to Atlanta. I mean, that's what has been missing as much as anything to me. You're not winning SEC titles because you're not even getting to Atlanta.
And you had the chance last year.
And you had to change, and that's what you have got to get over the hump.
It's kind of that whole story on Butch Jones was tweaked a little bit because everyone now says, well, you should have won it each of the last 2 years. You weren't favored 2 years ago. So that's that's looking in the rear view and changing it a little bit. If he had been the pick to win the SEC East 2 years ago, then I'd go ahead and say you should have won it the last 2 years. Could you have won it 2 years ago? Yeah. And I don't put it. You weren't the favorite though. But last year, you were a pretty strong favorite.
Yeah.
And you not only lost it, you didn't come within 2 games of it.
And you beat the 2 teams you had to beat.
Yeah.
And then you blew it by losing South Carolina.
And let's
to
look at
Vanderbilt.
this. It's been 10 years since they went to the championship game in 07, and that's the Saban years. And Tennessee has a unfair advantage of having to play Alabama every year when Georgia and Florida do not.
Right now, that's true. I mean, there was a time in the 90s where Alabama had the
Yeah.
unfair advantage of having to play Tennessee every year.
Yeah.
But cyclical, I mean, until Nick Saban goes away, I don't see anything
That's
falling
it.
off down
Remember, I said that, and Sterling Hinton got so upset. And I said, but I really and truly believe that's true. And it's not just Tennessee. It's like the best teams after Alabama, you're 8-4. You know, that's what you're looking at.
Well, I thought it was interesting. Pat Dye, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, came out and said that Auburn should really be in the East. Missouri should be in the West. And then Gus Malzahn came out and said, yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I thought, yeah, I bet not. Yeah, you want to get into the East instead of having your big brother kick you in sand in your
But
face.
then you could have
year
Auburn
after
and
year.
Alabama playing on back-to-back weeks pretty much, couldn't you? If they were.
It hadn't hurt Ohio State, Michigan.
No.
So, all right, guys, thank you very much. When we come back, we are going to talk about, what are we going to talk about? Maybe I should read this. Oh, yeah, we've still got a fan approval rating of Butch Jones coming up. That was surprising to me. But next we'll talk coaching changes across the UT campus. Tennis, baseball. Plenty more football to come, though. Come on back.